The Universal Radio Gateway from Frequentis. I'm Pete Prater and I'm very pleased to present this proposal to you. While IX and dispatcher terminals allow management of comms resources via interface cards, that's the traditional way of working. So far so good, but now comes the Universal Radio Gateway. Frequentis' Universal Radio Gateway is the culmination of decades of designing mission-critical solutions for public safety. The innovation of the URG, in a nutshell, is in its multi-protocol land-mobile radio connectivity, associated conversion to a full IP stream for onward routing, and its variable deployment, highly scalable and comprehensive monitoring characteristics. So, it's a fully IP gateway using open standards to link any radio network standard to any supplier's control room solution, while safeguarding and delivering new functionality from network operators as it's delivered, such as text messaging, event monitoring, and what have you. The benefits of this innovative approach are immediately apparent, but let's consider the user's needs a little more. This product is born of a desire to deliver value for money solutions to a range of today's mobile comms challenges. And let's face it, we're living in challenging times. Tetra network integration, transition to LTE networks, budgetary pressures and efficiency savings which drive consolidation, collaboration, new ways of working, and getting the maximum life out of your existing assets. Small to large agencies are all tackling with these, and they have their own unique challenges to maximize their investment in radio networks and to deal with transitional aspects. The URG from Frequentis solves these problems because it connects legacy and new networks to control rooms during transition. It connects multiple control rooms to one or more radio network, and it connects networks to networks. Well, how? Well, the URG is characterized by open standards. The Universal Radio Gateway offers standardized open interfaces for voice and data solutions, SIP, RTP, etc., instead of using proprietary protocols. It has a consolidated or distributed architecture. It has comprehensive integrated management tools and reporting. And due to duplication and activation of all important system components and the decentralization of software, the application software, it delivers high availability and reliability characteristics. And it supports end-to-end encryption, voice and data interfacing, and it adapts to and delivers new network provider functionality and features on the go. But is this just vaporware, or does it really exist? It does exist. The URG is being deployed in North Rhine-Westphalia today, providing centralized network entry points for 60, yes, 60 fire services geographically spread, linking to 5 URG points of presence, providing access to 9 BD BOSS access points. The URG is now being adopted by the Metropolitan Police Service in London. It's to solve its business continuity and transition challenges during the move from airwave to ESN. And that's a transition that could last many years. Another opportunity for critical users is that URG represents competition or a solution for network providers for the inter-systems interface. The user or operator now has the choice of how to manage that question, and anyway, if not in a primary role, this can be used in a fallback role as well. So the business case becomes more clear, and it applies equally to users and to service providers. Access port pooling. We identified that a large metropolitan police force could realise 27% savings in the number of network access ports that it uses, and that would equate to 2.19 million euros per year in savings to that organisation. Further, the 60-plus fire brigades that we mentioned earlier are sharing common access to national networks. The existing interfaces prior to URG required the use of individual one-to-one ratio. But with URG, the complexity has been de-risked, and we deployed this and reduced the reliance on the gateways, and in doing so delivered cost and operational benefits. Interconnection of legacy with new network radio systems is also another benefit, as is control room flex and reuse. Your control room will change over time, and the URG supports that. You can extend the life of existing control room solutions, be they from Frequentis or other providers. There's potential for a nationwide implementation of the URG, allowing open standard connection to a new LTE network from all existing control room supplier solutions for well over 100 control rooms and over 2,000 operator seats. How? With Unified Radio Gateways prepared to use digital radio technologies like LTE, we simply write another plug-in for that, and we open up the IP stream to any network control room solution provider, be they Capita, Frequentis, APD, whoever.
Peter, I'm going to have to stop you there, since the 5 minutes are up. great effort. So I'm going to hand it over to our judges now, who have got 5 minutes for possible questions. So Robin, Phil, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Peter, for your pitch. First question. I'm going to jump straight to the business case because you know I like business cases and savings. You talked about 60 fire services collaboration and the URG providing various benefits. You didn't actually say what those benefits were. Any value that you've saved? Any benefits you can talk about?
Yeah, the actual cost savings, I'm not at liberty to say what that is, but basically what they've been able to do is reduce the number of access ports that they've required from the Tetra provider from many down to a lot less by the deployment of a number of URG points of presence.
If I asked you to describe in one sentence what really makes this innovative, what would your answer be?
I think it's the fact that up until now we've always been looking at this one-to-one ratio between the control room operator seat and the network in question. And in this instance, we're now breaking that rule completely. This URG offers the ability to pool these radio resources, open it up to an IP stream, which can then be converted to and used to other radio networks or back into the control room. So it's the ability to translate into IP that makes the real difference here and service multiple protocols.
But hasn't this been done before, Peter?
Not by anyone who's told us that.
Okay.
Or certainly sold it as
just checking.
Presently as we have.
And what in one sentence would be the greatest user benefit?
Well, I think the greater user benefit comes down to the cost savings, as we mentioned there with the large metropolitan police force. 27% savings in these access ports enable them to save $2 million a year off their budget.
Okay, and an important thing is obviously about ease of deployment. So typically, if me and Phil here, we have a couple of control rooms, we decide we want to, buy your solution. Mm-hmm. How long will it take to deploy so I can realise these savings as soon as possible?
Well, the sooner you place the order, the better, frankly. But having placed the order, we can get around to deploying these, depending on the complexity of the control rooms and the networks. All these things take time. The fact is, we're doing it. We've been doing it in North Rhine-Westphalia now for a period of about 2 years. The thing's been gradually developing and deploying. And in the Met Police now, we're going to have a year to make that happen. So it can, Met Police is one of the largest and most complex environments there is. But because we know that so well, we can do that in about a year.
And is this something that the control room operator can learn to drive quickly and easily, or is it something that's going to need a 3-week training
very
course?
much so. In fact, one of the benefits of this in the Metropolitan Police's environment is that there is no associated training requirement at all. In fact, more than that, rather than a new network coming into play and them having to receive a brand new user interface to control that, there is none of that. We're effectively converting the incoming signals and presenting them to the user in exactly the same form as we currently do the normal Tetra Talk groups. They'll appear as a slightly different name, same presentation, no learning. And in the case of the Met Police, that's over 2,000 operators, which don't have to be taken out, don't have the planning overhead, and of course it's a cost saving as well.
I'm glad I asked the question.
I'm very glad you asked the question. I hadn't quite got to that benefit earlier.
Thanks very much, Frequentis. Next up, who's going to be pitching with 5 minutes is Positive Technologies, who are presenting the PT SS7 attack discovery. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Really difficult after such a great pitch. Quickly about the background of the company. So we are security researchers, cybersecurity researchers. In other words, white hat hackers. And traditionally, we hack into any of the IT systems. About 3 years ago, we come to work with some of our customers, telecommunication companies. They asked us to look into the SS7 network. Right, so most of the today communication is processed through SS7 network, and I think maybe about 5 years ago we've seen last specialists actually leaving the area and saying that everything is going to move to LTE and everybody will forget about SS7. Unfortunately, this didn't happen, and next, I don't know, our assumption and maybe industry assumption, next 15 years we will continue to use this network. Um, the way that we designed the product was actually driven by the cases that we found. So when we started to analyze the security of SS7 network, we found that it's very easy for us, for example, to intercept calls, to intercept SMS, to track your location. And when we're speaking about this one, I don't need to be physically in this specific location. I can track today anybody in China, in the US, in any country in the world. Obviously, it's a very big threat to all of us, right? So we all have our devices on hand, and we all can be intercepted and listen to our conversation, right? So there's also a lot of private data that is transferred over the SMS messages, over the data that goes through your mobile phones. The tip of the iceberg is scandals like, for example, NSA tapping into Angela Merkel's phone, right, or Berlusconi phone, right? This is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to understand that SS7 is actually used as part of the critical national infrastructure in every country, right? Our trains are talking to telecom companies. Our nuclear power plants are talking to the telecom companies. Our smart meters and smart grids are managed and controlled by the remote devices with the use of the telecommunication protocols. When we started to look deeper into this, we actually discovered that companies like Facebook, Google, WhatsApp, right, or everybody's using on their phones. Banks, Citibank and other banks, in different locations they use different authentication method. One of the authentication methods is actually so-called OTP, one-time password. So when you want to make a transaction, your bank sends you a request and you confirm with your OTP. So this can easily be intercepted, and there's a lot of potential fraud in this. So what we hear in the media, it's only a tip, right? So there is a much bigger problem underneath, and I think telecoms have recently realized the seriousness, or let's say this, more advanced telecoms, they've been working on this for several years, and right now it's media that is pushing it forward. So when we discovered all these problems, we started to work with all of our customers, telecommunication companies, and developing solutions. So solution that we developed is actually has two components. One is attacking component, another one is defending component. Or I would say not defending, but identification component. So it sits in a telecom network. Usually there are two types of attacks that can be done is from the abroad. So traditionally we've performed about maybe 20 security researches for European and Asian telecom companies, and we found, for example, Africa, places like Africa, like Albania, different countries, they attack, for example, European countries. The most attacks are coming from there. Doesn't mean that they attack, but the attacks are coming from there. So in that sense, we built a solution that sits on a so-called international links or international border of a telecommunication company, and monitors for these external threats. Then it flags the problem to the operator, and in a near life time environment, they make their decisions to block the global title of another, for example, telecommunication company. So this solution can be deployed in telecommunication companies. The profits, it's very difficult in the security space to speak about profits, but if you switch off, for example, Vodafone in UK, daily they generate £17 million. Attacks can be two ways. Can be on the telecom, so to switch off communication, and the second one is actually attacks on the subscribers. This is when we want to protect customers. Again, today maybe you're not the target, but tomorrow, I don't know, some bad actors, financial fraud, terrorists.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to stop you there. The 5 minutes are up. Thanks very much for that presentation. I'm going to hand it over to our panel of judges again. Again, 5 minutes of possible questions. Over to you.
Thank you. We talk about innovation. During your pitch, you actually said that other people have been working on this for a number of years. So how from an innovation point of view, why is your product different?
So yes, people have been working a lot, but nobody has actually came with a software that can protect from these things or can alert on these things, right? So there are many different softwares that protect in theory, but in practice we over the last, for example, year we developed about 70 types of attacks, right? And these attacks are not known to the operators. We performed about 20, as I said last year, 20 penetration tests for European and Asian telecoms, and unfortunately 100% of all telecoms we've been successful, meaning that they are not protected, all of them. So there are many companies like, for example, SS7 firewalls that sits on the border, some STP devices in the network, they have some functionality, but what is lacking is the intelligence. Intelligence cannot be generated by the devices that can cut off the wire at some points, right? So it needs to be generated by understanding of the overall security posture.
I think we all understand that cybersecurity is becoming a rapidly growing problem. But what in your case is the incentive for a national operator to implement such a system?
Right. So there are typically several things. One is that operators, they are worried about their reputation. So example, in the UK, TalkTalk, for example, cybersecurity incident actually cost them 35% of the stock go down, right? So it's a huge revenue losses. The second one is there is regulation. So for example, there is EU regulation of data protection. So there are fines up to 2% of the global revenue. Again, if we're talking Vodafone $46 billion revenue, we're talking about 900 million of fines, right? Australia, for example, they are a little bit more advanced. They have legislation that is that operators need to follow, and this in regards to the security. There's also organizations like GSMA and ITU. They're working on GSMA. Actually, in the product we implemented some of the recommendations from GSMA. They, so to say, break down the attack on a criticality level, and they separated it into 1 or 6 levels, depending on from where the attack is going, who is the is it attack on a subscriber or it's attack on the infrastructure. So all of this is implemented in the product. It's very straightforward. So if you're the top manager of the company, and you, I think today after recent events, everybody is looking into this. There are no solutions out there that are ready to be to protect, and this is actually, I think, most advanced companies in terms of in-house research. Guys like, I don't know, Orange, for example, Vodafone, Telefonica, they do a lot of things internally, of course, interesting things, and they can employ different technologies to actually provide a certain level of protection. But we're talking not just today these big guys, right, who have money and resources. We're talking 800 telecoms around the world, and SS7 is so interconnected network that it doesn't matter where you're based. So you're protecting not only your network, but you're protecting the global SS7 network, which is the challenge of this.
And just to ensure some consistency, similar question as the previous pitch. If me and Phil decided we needed this protection today, how long would it take to implement?
So depends on the size of a telecom and depends how many networks you operate. But the physical deployment of a solution is 4 to 6 weeks, right? So it's installation on a server and it starts monitoring your network. There's a lot of coordination with different departments, right? Because telecoms today, they cannot just switch off if somebody is attacking them, right? So there's a lot of pre-configuration, and plus it all transfers the information to the higher management to actually show the threats, show the equivalent of money losses, etc. Right? So business needs convincing that this is worth spending money for.